Hello, everyone. Tonight we are following a creature that walked the shoreline long before there was even a word for shoreline. A creature that never blinked, not once. Not when storms cracked open the sky, not when predators stalked close, not even when the sun dried its eyes into glass. You're in its world now, a place of endless salt shallow waves and silence so thick you can hear your own nervous swallow. The air is damp and warm. You feel like you've just stepped into a steam bath with no door. It drank salt water. It liked it. You probably won't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where and when you're watching from. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of a vanished coastline, your boots crunching through crushed coral and powdered gypsum. Once this was a great tidal basin. Now it's a fossil ghost of salt and silence. Wind skims the surface, dragging whispers across a long dead lagoon. The air tastes like rusted pennies and sun-scorched shells. It hasn't rained here in years, but once long ago it never stopped. There's a single figure ahead of you. It doesn't move. Not yet. It's the dinosaur that never blinked. And that's not an exaggeration. This creature, likely a member of the Elasmosauridae or some similar long-necked salt-hardened lineage, lacked true eyelids. Instead, it had a sort of permanent stare, its eyes protected only by a nictitating membrane, a transparent third eyelid that swept sideways like the cleaning brush in an aquarium. And even that it didn't used to blink, just to moisten and clean like a low-effort windshield wiper. What kind of life does a creature lead when its eyes are always open? That question sits with you as you stand there watching it. Watching you. It doesn't blink. You shift, uncomfortable. Somewhere between a crocodile and a swan in body shape, it stands 6 meters long with a neck that would make any yoga instructor jealous. The sun reflects in its obsidian eyes. The heat warps the air around its body like it's being cooked in real time. And yet it stands there perfectly still, like a statue sculpted out of driftwood and purpose. The fossil record hints at its kind thriving in saline estuaries and tidal lagoons. Environments too harsh for most species, where salt cakes the ground and seeps into everything like gossip. But this one, it drinks it. Has to. There's no other water source around and no evidence it ever left this region. Most dinosaurs, like modern reptiles, would have shriveled up if they drank this much salt. But not this one. Some paleontologists theorize it had glands near its nostrils, similar to modern seabirds that could excrete excess salt, making seawater drinkable. Others argue it was something stranger, that it metabolized salt directly its body using sodium gradients as a kind of internal cooling or regulation system. That idea, of course, is deeply controversial. Historians still debate whether its unique physiology was a fluke of survival or a glimpse into a whole missing category of saline-adapted giants. You try to blink the salt from your own eyes. No gland helps you. The creature shifts finally and begins to walk. Its feet are wide, padded for soft ground and webbed. Not for swimming, not entirely, but for treading over mudflats and brine-slick shores, where one wrong step could sink you waist-deep. As you follow, the silence is broken by a soft hissing sound. It takes you a minute to realize it's the wind dragging salt crystals across exposed bones. You step over the curved remains of something ancient and short-lived. A fish, maybe? Or the tail of a smaller reptile? Something that couldn't take the salt like this one could. A group of gull-like birds circles overhead. Their calls are shrill mocking. You swear they're laughing at you. You trudge on. The sun sets, but nothing changes in the creature's eyes. It doesn't squint, doesn't blink, doesn't adjust. That same glassy stare absorbs the last of the orange light and keeps walking. What kind of dreams do you have if your eyes never close? Maybe none. Maybe you just remember everything always like an endless loop of observation with no relief. That idea unsettles you more than any predator could. You stop for a moment to rest. There's an odd plant nearby, short, fleshy, and blue-green. You touch it, and it lets out a faint popping sound. Turns out it's a halophyte, a salt-loving organism that thrives where everything else gives up. In fact, you just accidentally stepped on one of Earth's oldest surviving plants. Congrats. It'll probably outlive you. Far ahead, the dinosaur pauses. It lowers its long head toward a shallow pool of milky water. You expect hesitation, some sniffing. Nope. It plunges its face in like it's been craving this all day. You try to follow its lead. Scoop some up, taste it. Bad idea. It's like gargling with seawater and gravel. You immediately regret your decision. The creature lifts its head. A single line of brine runs down its chin. Then it walks on as if refreshed. You're left coughing up salt and regret. Night descends fast here. The stars come out in waves, first one or two, then a billion. You look up. The dinosaur doesn't. Its eyes reflect starlight like twin moons, still unblinking. You finally lie down. You don't know if it'll sleep. You're not even sure if you can sleep knowing it's watching. But it doesn't move, doesn't close its eyes. You roll over and close yours just for a second. Just for a second. When you wake, it's already gone. You sit up fast, heart stammering in your chest. For a moment, the world is still a blur of salt haze and leftover starlight. You rub your eyes like a panicked child who overslept on the day the world was ending. Then you spot them, its footprints. They stretch in a perfect line pressed deep into a chalky crust that once blanketed an ancient lagoon. You can almost hear the squish of a footfall, even though these prints are at least 90 million years old. Your boots crunch as you follow, stepping into each depression like a clumsy time traveler trying to match a ghost's pace. The ground beneath you is bizarre hardened salt mixed with gypsum, then softened by just enough humidity to make you wonder if it's alive. You kneel to examine one of the tracks. The detail is unreal. Webbing, heel impressions, even the faint drag of its tail tip trailing behind like a forgotten signature. This place was once water. Not deep, not raging, just an endless inland sea so shallow you could wade through it for days without it reaching your chest. But don't let that fool you. It was treacherous, briny, shimmering with evaporite minerals that gleamed like broken glass under the sun. No fish could live here. Only crustaceans and salt-hardened oddities. The tracks turn slightly. You follow. Back in the Cretaceous, this region sprawled across what we now call Central Asia. At the time, tectonic plates were rearranging continents like a toddler with building blocks. Huge inland seas formed and vanished in mere geological minutes. The sea here, what geologists dryly refer to as an ephemeral carbonate basin, appeared, thrived, and disappeared over a few million years. Think of it as a very large, very salty puddle that overstayed its welcome. And in that puddle lived your unblinking friend. You press on, watching how the prints angle up a slight rise. This creature liked elevation, not because it needed a view, but because lowlands meant sludge and sludge meant getting stuck. Again, one print ahead is different. Skid marks. A stumble. It looks like it slipped on something slick, maybe algae, maybe its own arrogance. The toes splayed out, and for one heartbeat of deep time, it lost balance. You imagine it flailing, neck swinging like a whip, maybe even letting out a frustrated grunt that sounded like someone shaking a wet rug. You chuckle at the thought, a dinosaur tantrum. Add that to the list of things your elementary school textbooks never mentioned, but then something odd happens. The footprints stop. Not just pause, stop, like it vanished. You circle the last print. It's clean, deeply pressed, no sign of lifting off or running, just nothing beyond it. You're suddenly standing at the edge of an ancient mystery, half expecting it to leap out from the salt brush and yell, "Gotcha!" You scan the horizon. Nothing. Just flat, shimmering emptiness. In the far distance, salt towers have formed massive spires of gypsum and halite that grow like stalagmites out of an open wound. They look almost deliberate, like sculptures left behind by something with taste and no eyelids. And then it hits you. You remember something you read in a dusty, underfunded museum brochure? Some salt basins developed crystal lids. Sheets of mineral would sometimes form thin surfaces over brine pools, strong enough to walk on until you couldn't. You peer ahead. The ground beyond the last footprint sparkles too much, too perfect, too smooth. Oh no. You take a rock and toss it forward. For a moment it sits still. Then it drops through, vanishing with a soft splash. You step back. That wasn't ground, it was glass. Mineral glass. Somewhere below is a layer of water so toxic it could pickle bone. And your dinosaur, it didn't fall in. It walked across. Maybe it knew the weight. Maybe its wide, padded feet distributed pressure just right. Maybe it walked this path before and remembered. Or maybe it didn't care. Either way, it crossed. You stare at the empty horizon and feel small. Not in the poetic look at the stars kind of way, but small like a mistake. This creature had a map you'll never read. Instincts older than books. And then, as the sun tilts upward, you see them faint indentations gliding across the salt glass. Still there. Just as hard to see unless the light hits them right. It did walk across, and it didn't even flinch. You sit overwhelmed. Not by awe, by logistics. You have no wide padded feet, no nictitating membrane, no evolutionary cheat code. You'll have to go around. And you do, skirting the edge of the sinkhole, watching the prints like they're the lines in a holy script you weren't meant to understand. The birds return, circling high. This time they seem less amused and more impressed. Halfway through your detour, you spot something strange sticking out of a dried mud bank, an ancient twisted object like a ribbon of stone. You dig around it gently, fingers trembling. It's a jawbone. Long, thin, full of fine, interlocking teeth. Not for tearing, not for crushing. This one filtered, like a baleen whale. You remember the theory some long-necked marine reptiles didn't just drink salt, they filtered small prey from it, sifted brine like gourmet soup. It's possible the creature you're tracking fed this way too. Or maybe this bone belonged to a cousin. Or an enemy. Historians still debate whether filter feeding evolved more than once among marine dinosaurs, or if it was just a local adaptation that vanished with the salt. You leave the jawbone where it lay. The creature's trail continues, angling downhill again toward a basin rimmed with bone-white sand. You follow it. You've come this far. Your feet hurt. Your water's warm. You're not even sure if you're still chasing it or if it's letting you. But you press forward. It still hasn't blinked. The basin below you yawns like a bleached-out amphitheater, bowl-shaped and dazzling. You squint instinctively, but of course the dinosaur didn't. It walked straight in without hesitation, eyes wide and glossy as ever. You ease your way down a sloped ridge, each step a minor landslide of powdered minerals. The ground here crackles beneath your weight, and you get the feeling it remembers everything. At the center of the basin is a shallow pool. Not water exactly, more like brine the color of old tea. It's hot to the touch with a film of something biological coating its surface. You swear it's breathing. The dinosaur stands knee-deep in it, utterly at home, its long neck craned downward as it slurps from the noxious broth like a teenager with a boba tea addiction, and zero judgment. You gag just watching. The smell alone is enough to slap you sideways like pickled fish left in a microwave. And yet it drinks with complete serenity. Not a wince, not a blink. Scientists believe that some prehistoric marine reptiles, like our unblinking friend, had specialized desalination glands that rivaled modern seabirds. Located above the eyes or along the snout, these glands secreted excess salt in concentrated fluid form, allowing the creature to survive entirely on seawater. It's possible this dinosaur drank nothing but salt water its entire life and still lived longer than most mammals today. You crouch behind a slab of crumbled gypsum and watch transfixed. Each sip it takes is slow, deliberate. Its throat moves rhythmically, swallowing what no other dinosaur could tolerate. And the eyes, oh, those eyes, still wide, still shimmering, like glass marbles left in the sun too long. No blinking. Not even when a gust of salt-laden wind whips across the basin. You shade your own eyes instinctively. They sting, tear up. Your body screams at you to close them. But this animal, it's built for exposure. It's a creature forged by wind and brine and solar assault. It evolved for discomfort and made it home. And yet, there's something oddly peaceful about it, something zen. You half expect it to start humming and offer you inner peace with a side of algae. Instead, it lowers itself gently into the pool, submerging everything but its long neck and head. Steam curls from the surface like breath from a sleeping dragon. For a moment, its motionless neck rippling slightly as it adjusts. Then its head tips forward and it exhales a long, deep sigh. No sound, just vapor rolling out of its nostrils like incense smoke. You wonder if this is what contentment looks like in a creature that's never blinked. Out of nowhere, a splash. The dinosaur shifts head, turning sharply. Its movement is precise but not panicked. Something else just entered the basin. You turn and spotted a smaller shape, same body plan but half the size. A juvenile, perhaps, or a mate, or competition. The newcomer wades in from the opposite side, careful but not hesitant. It mimics the other's posture, lowering itself into the water with practiced ease. The two now sit opposite each other like ancient monks, at a hot spring, steam curling between them. They don't fight, not yet. But their eyes lock and neither one blinks. Tension thickens. You can feel it in the air like a static charge. You lean in too close and catch your reflection in the brine eyes blinking rapidly like a nervous mammal with no business here. The two giants rise in near-perfect unison. Water sloshes off their backs as they circle each other in slow, deliberate steps. No noise, no snarls. Just a watery ballet of two beings who've known this ritual longer than rivers have known gravity. It doesn't escalate. Not yet. Just a test. A silent sizing up. A momentary reenactment of ancient choreography. Then, as quickly as it began, the tension fades. The smaller one backs away. Not defeated, just respectful. It exits the pool, climbs a low ridge, and disappears into the glare. Your dinosaur watches it go. Still unblinking, still silent. Then it resumes drinking like nothing happened. You exhale. You hadn't realized you'd stopped breathing. Off to your left, something catches your eye. A fossilized shell intact, surprisingly ornate. You brush sand from it and discover spirals etched with what look like wave patterns. A prehistoric nautiloid, maybe. Or something older. Hard to tell. Odd fact of the day, there's a species of modern brine shrimp that can survive being boiled alive in geothermal pools. Its eggs remain viable for decades in salt. You suspect the basin you're in once played host to ancestors of such impossibly stubborn creatures. You suspect they would have liked your dinosaur. Historians still debate whether the brine pools of the Cretaceous were cradles of life or toxic dead zones. Some evidence points to teeming microbial colonies. Other data insists they were sterile deserts purgatories of sodium and heat. No one can agree because nobody can survive long enough in those conditions to find out, except this thing. The sun climbs higher. The wind kicks up, raking across the basin like claws. And your dinosaur just keeps drinking. At last it finishes. Slowly, it rises from the pool, crusted in white. Salt clings to its scales like armor. As it steps out, each movement leaves behind thick, sludgy footprints that immediately begin to dry, shrinking into rigid molds. You follow them, again trailing just far enough behind that your presence won't be noticed if it's even possible for it to notice anything with those unwavering eyes. Up the ridge it goes, shaking water from its hide with one rolling tremor. Crystals scatter. The sun glints off them like falling stars. You're not sure why, but you whisper thank you to the empty air, maybe for letting you witness it. maybe for not noticing you at all. It walks on, still no blinking. You blink for both of you. You trudge behind it into a deadland that once shimmered like a drowned mirror. Now it looks more like someone left a frying pan on too long, cracked, scorched, and radiating that invisible heat that makes everything shimmer with false promises. This place used to be an inland sea, a massive one. Think the size of the Mediterranean, but shallower, warmer, and far saltier. Now it's a salt desert, a basin where sea once laughed. You kick a brittle shard of crystallized halite, and it snaps in half like a sugar cookie. Somewhere beneath your feet are the echoes of crashing waves that haven't rolled in since the late Cretaceous. The dinosaur climbs higher still, its steps steady and deliberate as if it remembers the landscape differently. You wonder what the view looked like back then. Imagine water stretching to the horizon dotted with mangrove-like trees that could survive the brine clouds bloated with heat, and pterosaurs gliding low over the surface like paper planes dipped in menace. Now it's dry, cracked, and forgotten. The air grows hotter as you climb. Not hotter like beach hot. Hotter like you start to question your decisions hot. There's a wind, but it's useless, just a conveyor belt of more heat and the faint sting of airborne salt. Your lips taste like regret and sodium. Still, you press on climbing after the creature as it crests a shallow ridge and pauses. From up here, the land folds outward into a dried seabed filled with salt chimneys and ripple fossils that look like they were carved just yesterday. The dinosaur's tail swings slowly behind it, a pendulum counting off the time since the ocean left. And you know what's strange? The more inhospitable this place gets, the more alive the dinosaur seems. It lowers its head and sniffs the air. Or maybe it's tasting it. Some species used Jacobson's organs in the roof of their mouths to smell on a molecular level. You've heard of lizards that lick the wind. This creature seems to inhale whole stories with a single breath. You crouch in its shadow, resting. The sun makes your scalp feel like a baked potato in a foil wrapper. Still no blink from the beast. You remember reading once about ancient evaporite deposits? They're layered in thin stripes like tree rings, each line representing a different pulse of ancient tide. Scientists extract cores from them to read prehistoric climate patterns like a diary written in salt. According to one study, this region dried up at least 5 different times, only to flood again each time the climate shifted. The last flood was 85 million years ago. You pick up a piece of this ancient puzzle, a thin slab of salt banded in pink and white, and realize it's older than every word you've ever spoken. And your dinosaur's ancestors were here for all 5 floods. There's a movement ahead. Something small and fast, a desert lizard with mottled skin and cartoonishly oversized feet. It skitters across the salt like it's late for something. The dinosaur doesn't react. But then again, why would it? This isn't its competition. That lizard drinks from puddles. This creature drinks from poison. And come to think of it, it never seems to get thirsty. Not the way mammals do. Not the tongue-hanging, lip-licking thirst. It's as if its body has learned to lock every drop inside. Maybe its massive gut acts as a saline reservoir. Maybe its metabolism only kicks in when something explodes. Historians still debate whether this species stored water internally like a camel or simply recycled fluids so efficiently that thirst became irrelevant. Either way, your water bottle is nearly empty and this thing just keeps going like a brine-powered steam engine. You descend the far side of the ridge and notice something strange. The salt crust here is smoother, less cracked, more sculpted. You kneel and trace a pattern with your fingers. It looks like a swirl, almost floral, too regular to be an accident. You follow the markings across the flat, slowly realizing they repeat spirals within spirals, curving around invisible centers. Then it hits you. These are evaporite whirl patterns caused by concentrated heat and wind rotation acting on shallow pools. But here's the twist: they're placed in clusters, dozens of them. Each one different in size and orientation. It almost looks intentional. You glance at the dinosaur, which now stands in the middle of the pattern field, perfectly centered, like it belongs there. like it returned. Is this a kind of salt calendar? A memory grid, an ancient migratory marker? No one knows. Theories vary wildly from temperature-regulating behavior to speculative mating displays to the ever-popular, "we have no clue but it's definitely weird." Your dinosaur begins walking the perimeter of the largest swirl, slowly. Each step deliberate. It's not random. It's rehearsed, practiced. And you're watching a ritual from 85 million years ago. The ground beneath your feet hums with silence, the kind that presses against your ribs and makes you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat. You hold still. You don't want to interrupt whatever this is. Because suddenly this isn't just a creature. It's a keeper of vanished seas. It's a witness to the world's thirst. It's the thing that didn't need to blink because it never stopped watching. And you poor blink-happy mammal are barely a footnote in its story. The wind shifts. You smell it before you see it. A scent like distant thunder and kelp left too long in the sun. You wrinkle your nose. The dinosaur doesn't react. Bites, it. Of course it doesn't. It just lifts its head slowly, neck flexing like a suspension bridge in motion, and releases a sound that you will never ever forget. It isn't a roar. It isn't even loud. It's more like the echo of something that should have been thunder but decided to keep its distance. A low-frequency groan that rolls through your bones like a freight train whispering your name. Somewhere between foghorn and avalanche, between whale song and bass guitar string, pulled taut in slow motion. It is the sound of a throat built like driftwood and thunder. The call hangs in the air. Long, low, lonesome. The kind of sound that seems to glance backward in time as it leaves. You freeze. Every instinct you have, every little mammalian reflex passed down from ancestors who knew when to bolt, tells you to lie down and play dead. You ignore it. You keep watching. Because here's the thing, it isn't calling to you. It's calling to someone else. And suddenly, you're not sure what's more terrifying, the idea that another one might answer, or that none ever will again. The sound repeats, this time slightly higher in pitch as though it's adjusting for distance, or age, or hope. Scientists argue about dinosaur vocalizations like it's a family feud. Some say they couldn't make much sound at all, not without the syrinx that modern birds use. Others point out that crocodilians and ostriches produce deep bellows, using air sacs and resonant cavities. So maybe dinosaurs, especially ones with massive chests and long throats, had their own way of getting the job done. Your dinosaur. Its chest expands visibly with each call. You can practically feel the vibrations ripple out from its rib cage. There's a rhythm to it. A pause between notes like someone drumming underwater. Then silence. Except the wind. Except the taste of something ancient in your mouth. Except your own heart, which now beats just a little faster, even though nothing has happened. Yet, it moves again, climbing higher. The slope is steeper here, but it doesn't falter. It climbs like it's done it 1,000 times. You follow behind, legs burning. This high ground looks out over what must have once been a sea cliff, now just a crumbling rim of salt-hardened limestone dotted with fossilized shells. You sit for a moment to breathe, to think, to sweat. It doesn't. Of course not. Still unblinking. You notice its throat again. There's a strange motion just under the skin, a slow rolling flex like something coiled in layers. At first you think it's a heartbeat. Then you remember something weird. Some modern seabirds like albatrosses and petrels have throat pouches for storing extra food or regulating salt. Maybe this dinosaur has something like that, but scaled up to the size of a wine barrel. Maybe that's why it can wade through brine pools and drink sludge that would pickle your lungs. Historians still debate whether this throat structure evolved purely for survival, or whether it played a role in communication like an acoustic chamber. Some even suggest it was used for temperature regulation, salt-cooled vocal sacs, if you can believe it. You stand again, brush salt dust from your knees, and keep climbing. The terrain here is littered with old bones, some fossilized, some not, all bleached. At first, you think they're scattered randomly. Then you see the pattern. They form a kind of corridor, not like a burial ground, more like a warning. You step carefully. A curved rib the length of your arm juts out of a stone half submerged in gypsum. You stop and examine it. It's from something big. Maybe not as big as the creature ahead of you, but big enough to have tried and failed. Then a jawbone, crushed. Then vertebrae, snapped. The dinosaur ahead pauses. It turns its head not towards you but toward the bones. It doesn't make a sound, doesn't slow its breathing, but it stops for just a second. And maybe you imagine this, but its tail shifts slightly as if brushing the ghosts away. Then it moves on. You feel the weight of that silence in your chest. These weren't just old bones. They were reminders, messages maybe, lessons carved into the landscape. You whisper a thank you to whatever decided not to eat you today. As you walk, the light begins to change. The sun is dipping now, making the salt gleam gold. Shadows stretch like lazy snakes. The heat softens. The silence thickens. And that low groaning call returns again, fainter this time, answered only by its own echo. You think about eyelids. You think about how we close them to sleep, to cry, to hide, to dream. And this creature it just watched, always, even now. You start to wonder if maybe blinking is a luxury, a weakness, or a kindness. Then something funny happens. As you reach the top of the ridge, you stub your toe on a stone and trip forward hard. Your hand catches on a sharp-edged fossil, thin and blade-like. You swear, loudly. Your dinosaur turns its head finally in your direction. And those unblinking eyes meet yours. Not like before, not accidentally, not in passing, but deliberately. There's no expression in them, no warmth. But not hostility either, just witnessing. As if to say, you're still here. You blink, 3 times in quick succession. It doesn't. And then, as quietly as it arrived, it turns back to the horizon, walks 2 more steps and vanishes behind the ridge. Gone again? You sit down hard in the salt. The ground is warm. Your heart is tired. Your eyes sting. But the wind feels cooler now, brushing across your face like a worn-out lullaby. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you think you hear that low rumble one more time, fainter than breath. Like thunder wrapped in memory. You descend the ridge slowly, boots skidding on loose grains of fossilized salt. Your dinosaur's trail is fresh again, each step crisp-edged and steaming slightly in the cooler air. The sun has dipped low, casting everything in bronze. You realize that despite the searing heat, earlier this place turns cold fast when the sun bows out. It doesn't ease into evening, it drops off a cliff. The creature walks ahead unhurried, as if it has all the time in the world. And maybe it does. Or maybe it's already seen enough time that a few more hours barely register. The ground levels out into a plain of silver sand speckled with glinting mineral chunks. You bend to pick up a translucent cube the size of a sugar lump. Salt crystal square as a gift box. It's beautiful and sharp, like something you'd find in a jeweler's tray until it cuts your thumb. You suck the blood away instinctively. The dinosaur doesn't look back. It never does. And suddenly, you're walking behind the world's most indifferent celebrity followed. Studied, tracked, and completely uninterested in you. The sand crunches underfoot as you move across the flats. Occasionally, you pass shallow dips where old nests once were shallow scoops in the ground outlined with ringed deposits. Some still hold fragments, curved bits of fossilized eggshell, no larger than your palm, dotted with mineral growths that make them look like tiny moons. This is nesting ground, right here in the middle of nowhere, a dead salt pan that should kill almost anything soft-bodied. And yet, someone laid eggs here. Lots of someones, more than once. Historians still debate whether these nests belong to saltwater-adapted reptiles, or if this ground simply fossilized better than elsewhere. The pattern of spacing, however, suggests intention. No crowding, no haphazard dumping, just ordered precision as if they knew something about sun angle and mineral seep that we still don't. And the eggshells, They're not crushed, which means something hatched. Your dinosaur pauses near one of the nests and lowers its head. You freeze. It exhales a long, slow breath, nostrils flaring. Then it taps the edge of the crater with one claw. You wait. Nothing happens. Then it moves on. You follow. You're walking through what used to be a maternity ward for thunder beasts, and it still smells faintly of ozone and salt decay, as if the air remembers labor pains. Off to your left, you spot something protruding from a dune. You dig around it with both hands and pull free a long, pale object, like a club but narrower at the base. You turn it over, a femur probably, from a juvenile. Heavier than it looks, there's a shallow groove worn into one side, possibly from gnawing. Odd fact of the hour. There's a modern bird in South America, the hoatzin, that smells like manure and nests over swamp water. Scientists think it's a relic of a once larger lineage of swamp-adapted fowl. So maybe your dinosaur's nesting habits weren't strange at all. Maybe this salty plain was once lush and warm and full of fermented vegetation and loud swampy songs. Or maybe it was always terrible. Maybe they liked it that way. The ground ahead changes again. The sand gives way to a flat plate-like surface of mineral crust flakes that crack under your weight like walking across a giant creme brulee. The dinosaur steps carefully but confidently. It knows the spots that won't cave in. You do not. Your foot plunges through up to your shin, and suddenly your leg is soaking in warm, sulfur-scented brine. You shriek a word you shouldn't say on a PG-13 channel and scramble out panting. You're lucky, just a surface pool. But if that had gone deeper, you'd be stew. The dinosaur stops and turns its head again, not toward you, just vaguely in your direction. The eyes glint in the dim light. Still unblinking. Of course. It turns forward and continues, like it never noticed or didn't care. You keep going, because what else can you do? As night thickens, the stars appear, first scattered pinholes, then a full cascade. Out here, there's no pollution, no haze, nothing between you and the full velvet smear of the cosmos. You stop to stare. The dinosaur does not. It keeps walking, and for a while its long neck and tail become nothing more than shadow lines across a field of glowing crust. Then you smell something different, brine number more organic. You descend into a slight depression and find what must have once been a watering hole, now dry but still ringed with fossilized algae. A cracked dish of greenish-gray stone. In the center is a pile of bones, bird-sized, delicate, tangled together like spaghetti. Predator kill site. Or a mass die-off? You poke around and find feathers. Not fossilized, not modern, but something in between. Brown, stiff, salt-soaked. A seabird. A scavenger. You don't know, but something died here recently. And not from old age. You stand quickly, scan the horizon. The dinosaur is gone. You feel your chest tighten. Then in the near dark you spot it. Not far off. Standing over another shallow nest depression. This one isn't ancient, it's new. You creep closer. The surface has been disturbed recently. Scuffed edges, loose sand. In the center, an egg. Just one. Big enough to cradle in both arms. Coated in a thin, chalky rind that reflects the stars. The dinosaur lowers its head slowly. Nuzzles the egg once. Gently. You don't breathe. Then it steps away. Not hurried, not worried. Just done. You wait until it's moved far off, then step forward. You reach out. The egg is warm. Still, a faint vibration under your fingertips. Life, somehow, in this place of salt and silence. And overhead, the dinosaur's call echoes, once more low, calm, enormous. Not as a warning, not as a cry, but as a lullaby. You wake to find the wind stronger and the ground drier. Sometime during the night, the air changed. It's colder now with that familiar aftertaste of inland chill. You blink blearily, trying to remember where you are. Ah, right, a salt pan, an egg, a dinosaur that never blinked. You sit up slowly, the joints in your knees making small complaints. The egg is still there, snug in its shallow nest, motionless but warm. You resist the powerful urge to touch it again. You've already done more than any paleontologist ever could or ever should. The dinosaur is gone again, but not far. You see its trail a line of cleanly stamped prints angling toward a distant band of darker earth, the kind of soil that once held roots. You follow. Soon, the salt thins out. The ground grows darker, softer, hinting at a time when this part of the basin was almost hospitable. There are dead stumps here, fossilized wood half submerged in mineral. You kneel beside one, run your fingers along the grain. It's heavier than stone, but the rings are still visible. Thick, close together. It grew fast, which means something made it grow fast. Water. Not from the sky, there's never enough of that here. But maybe from beneath. Springs, aquifers, surges of mineral-rich moisture that bubbled up through cracks. Prehistoric irrigation courtesy of a volcanic earth that still had stories to tell. Somewhere between then and now, this area supported trees, plants, maybe even grass. And maybe that's why the dinosaur came here. Not just to drink, but to thrive. You round a bend and spot it again, standing perfectly still beneath a crooked fossil tree, as if it's revisiting a memory. Its neck arches toward the sky, mouth closed, eyes wide, still unblinking. It turns slightly and you notice something new. Just behind the eyes, nestled under a ridge of bone, is a shallow slit. Almost invisible. It shifts slightly in the light, and for the first time you catch it. A blink. No, not a full one. Just that membrane, the nictitating veil. It moves side to side in a gentle sweep, almost elegant. Birds have them. Sharks, some reptiles. It's a way to clean the eye without blocking vision. But this dinosaur, it uses it rarely, sparingly, like a priest might lift a hood only once a year. Historians still debate whether such structures in dinosaurs served as basic biological maintenance, or if they evolved as a defense against constant sand and salt exposure. Some theorize these membranes were even reflective, creating the illusion of glowing eyes at night to confuse predators. You think about that as it resumes walking, each step measured and ghost quiet. It heads toward the low ridge that separates the fossil woods from the salt basin. You follow, boots sinking slightly in the softer soil. The change in terrain is oddly comforting. But then something strange catches your attention, a set of smaller footprints crossing the dinosaur's path. Not from a hatchling, not from anything related. These tracks are narrow with long toes and sharp claws. They pace back and forth, erratic, frenzied. You kneel, study them, predator. Maybe a scavenger. Something that didn't expect the giant to show up. And judging by the spacing, it panicked. Ran. Good choice. Because there's something about that throat. You can't stop thinking about it. That low groan wasn't just communication. It was warning. A wall of sound that rattled through smaller creatures like an earthquake they didn't know how to brace for. Odd fact of the morning, elephants use subsonic rumbles to communicate across vast distances. Sometimes the frequencies are so low they travel through the ground better than air. Your dinosaur could have done the same. Salt flats are perfect acoustic mirrors. Maybe it was broadcasting something to creatures miles away. Or maybe it was just humming to itself. You wouldn't be surprised. It pauses at the ridge and lowers its head to the ground. You hurry forward, careful not to make noise. What you see next is strange. It's licking the dirt. Not eating, not biting. Just one long, slow drag of its tongue across the mineral-stained surface. You raise an eyebrow. Then you remember. Some reptiles use their tongues to taste chemical traces in the soil. Salt levels, moisture gradients, even pheromones left by others. This isn't feeding, it's reading. The dinosaur lifts its head again and snorts, spraying a fine mist of breath across the ridge. Then it steps over and vanishes behind the hill. You follow, quickly catching up just in time to see something spectacular. A stretch of landscape unlike anything you've seen so far. The salt is gone here. In its place, mud. Real rich blue-gray mud. Glossy and soft like freshly stirred paint. Crisscrossed with dozens, no hundreds of prints. Not just dinosaur tracks, bird tracks, mammal-like tracks, crawling tracks, some fossilized, some fresh. A convergence point. A watering ground. But not with water, with mud. You step down into the slop and feel it squish around your boots. It's warm, strangely welcoming, and filled with life. Bubbles rise occasionally, suggesting microbial colonies below, maybe even sulfur vents. The dinosaur kneels slowly, lowering itself until its belly touches the mud. Its tail drags behind like a painter's brush. You stare as it sighs deep, slow, and closes its eyes just long enough for the membrane to sweep again. A prehistoric mud bath. And somehow you understand. Salt and sun hardened its skin. Wind polished it. But here in the muck it could relax, soften, soothe whatever ancient muscles carried it across these burning miles. You crouch nearby, resting your hands in the mud. It's cool now. You close your eyes, just briefly. And for once, you don't feel the need to blink. The dinosaur rises slow and deliberate, as if pulled by invisible threads. Mud clings to its flanks like melted chocolate, sliding off in thick ribbons. When it takes its first step out of the mire, it leaves behind a perfect mold, 3 wide toes a heel, a sweep of tail immediately glossed over by rising steam. You wait a moment before standing. The heat under the mud has begun to build again, and the air takes on a sulfur tang that hits the back of your throat. The dinosaur doesn't mind. It walks on, crusting over with a fine coat of minerals as it goes, as if it's armoring itself with every step. You follow it back into the salt dunes, soft at first, then sharper, like glass ground to powder. The sand here has changed again. No longer white. Now it's golden, mixed with iron, glittering. You crest a low ridge and suddenly everything changes. Before you, the landscape opens into a maze of small dunes and strange indentations, concentric circles, pits, ridges shaped like melted braids. They're not natural, not completely. Nests, hundreds of them, not grouped together like a communal colony, but scattered, hidden, camouflaged between swells of shifting ground. Each depression carefully placed between dunes low enough to catch shade from the late-day sun, but not so low as to collect flooding during rare storms. Whoever laid them had a long memory. The dinosaur walks into the heart of it, slow and silent, weaving through the graveyard of its own making. You stop at the edge, awed. So many. Each nest tells a story. Some still cradle collapsed shells. Others are ringed in broken stone like tiny tombs. You find one, just one, with a single egg intact, partially buried. You leave it alone. You've learned your lesson. Why here? Why so many? You crouch beside one of the nests, digging gently with your fingertips. The floor is lined with thin layers of crushed shell plant matter and oddly charcoal, burned material. You frown. Was there fire here? Historians still debate whether dinosaurs used environmental fire intentionally. Some theorize they returned to previously burned areas to nest like some modern birds do, because charred ground is easier to dig and holds less parasite load. Others scoff, arguing the presence of charcoal is just bad luck and fossilization. But you're not so sure anymore. This place feels chosen, maintained, remembered. The dinosaur raises its head and scans the sky, not looking for predators, not scanning for threats, just remembering. Its neck cranes slightly left. It takes a single step toward one shallow basin and pauses, staring at it for a long moment. Then, with surprising delicacy, it lowers its body not just to lie down, but to press gently into the old hollow. It curls slightly, tail sweeping, neck folding, and just like that, it fits perfectly. You realize you're watching it return to a nest, not to lay, not to guard, to remember, to rest. The sun is low now. Light slants between the dunes, casting elongated shadows that mimic necks and tails. The air grows still. You sit cross-legged nearby, watching. You don't want to move. This feels sacred. A breeze stirs up grit. You blink. It doesn't. Its head rises and turns to you once again. That stare, ancient, heavy, glass-like, meets yours across the space between. You don't flinch. This time, neither do your eyes. Something changes in the silence. Not sound, not movement, just a shift in the weight of the air, like someone closed a door 100 miles away and the echo arrived. You realize this wasn't just a nesting site. It was a sanctuary, a pilgrimage ground. Maybe they came back here every cycle, every season, or every decade, depending on how long these things lived. To mate, to hatch, to die. And when it was over, when the basin turned to salt and the air to fire, some part of them still returned. You notice shallow grooves beside each nest. Not random scratches, not erosion, trails. As if every adult paused here each time to circle its nest just once before stepping away. One loop, a goodbye gesture, or a blessing. Odd fact for the night emperor penguins in the brutal cold of Antarctica. Return to the exact same spot every year to breed using magnetic cues and solar positioning. They nest in total darkness, in storms. They never forget where to go. Neither does your dinosaur. The stars appear again one by one, no longer brilliant and cold, but softened by the dusk haze. The creature sighs, not a sound, just a deep, visible shift in its chest like a tide going out. Then it rises, gingerly, steps out of the nest, walks forward. You follow. At the edge of the nesting field, it pauses beside a tall, narrow stone, wind-worn, streaked with mineral bands. It leans against it briefly, just a nudge, like a mark or a memory. Then, without another pause, it moves on, into the dark. You glance back at the field of nests and realize none of them are forgotten. Not here, not by this creature, not by the salt, not by the stars. The dunes fall behind you now, their curves sinking into the dark like spent waves on a cooling sea. The ground flattens and the air sharpens, drier, brisker, hinting at open wind ahead. The dinosaur strides with quiet certainty, its feet never dragging, never slipping. Always forward, always precise. You adjust your pack, wipe dust from your eyes, and keep going. The terrain grows harsher. To your left, a jagged shelf of mineral-scarred rock juts up like the edge of a shattered mirror. A few small creatures skitter along the base, lizardish things quick and alert, watching you with beady eyes before darting into cracks. They blink, rapidly. You envy them. But your dinosaur just marches on, headed for the edge of a land that remembers when salt still ruled. The crust underfoot thickens again, curling in warped, baked waves that crackle under each step. You find yourself treading on the ghost of a former shore. This was once the edge of something vast. A sea, yes, but not like ours. It wasn't blue, it wasn't kind. It was brine-rich, shallow. Broad as a continent stretching inland where it had no business going. And every million years or so, it withdrew like a tired parent leaving its children to deal with the mess. And your dinosaur. It chased it. You reach a wide, sunken plain. You know this place. You've seen it on maps. It's where the salt met the sweet, where ancient freshwater rivers spilled into brackish shallows, their silt churning in eddies like cream in tea. A place of tension, of balance. And your dinosaur lived for it. Not just in it, for it. This creature didn't stay in one place. It wandered. Not aimlessly, but seasonally. Strategically. It followed mineral flows and water lines that changed like moods. And when the rivers swelled, it pulled back. When they shrank, it moved in. You spot the signs. The prints grow deeper, softer. The ground here is more clay than salt. And clustered at the edge of a dry channel are the remains of other animals' bones twisted in odd positions, skulls bleached and broken. You kneel beside a femur, thin, curved, avian maybe, or mammalian, hard to say. Scattered nearby are fossilized reeds, collapsed nests, and petrified wood pieces etched with tooth marks. Something lived here. Lots of somethings. And then they didn't. Historians still debate whether this place was a migratory destination or a feeding corridor. Some think the river floods killed the animals en masse. Others believe predators corralled prey here when water receded. You have your own theory now. Your dinosaur wasn't just passing through. It was following. Salt. You spot it again ahead. paused at the edge of a broad gully, sniffing, tasting, judging. The riverbed is dry now, but you can see where it once curved like a question mark through the plain. Cracks map its floor. Trapped pools shimmer like mirrors, too shallow to drink, too salty to ignore. The dinosaur lowers its head and touches the ground with its tongue again. A moment later, it shifts direction, angling toward a band of darker earth to the north. A tributary, maybe. It's looking for saltwater. You watch stunned. It chooses it. Not just tolerates, not just survives. Seeks. Why? Modern animals avoid salt. Excess sodium is poison. Mammals sweat it out, birds excrete it, reptiles endure it at best. But this creature, like marine birds, sea turtles, and maybe even prehistoric crocodiles, seems built for it. Some paleontologists argue it possessed suborbital salt glands ducts behind the eyes that excrete concentrated brine. There's fossil evidence in cranial grooves, though not everyone agrees. The location, the size, the function still debated. But the behavior, you're watching it now. It doesn't blink, but it does weep. Not tears, salt. You move closer and catch it. Fine streaks of crystal forming along the ridge behind its eyes, sparkling like frost. No discomfort, no wiping, just a slow, constant process of separation. Like it's shedding part of the world it doesn't need. You whisper to yourself, that's why it never blinked. Because it never had to. Its eyes are always rinsed, always protected not from dust or light, but from the very element it lives in. Salt isn't its enemy, it's its element. Odd fact for the evening sea turtles can excrete so much salt from their eyes that people mistake it for crying. But it isn't sadness, it's efficiency. You wonder how many people, how many other creatures misunderstood this dinosaur's stare for indifference, coldness, even cruelty. But maybe it was just clarity. It walks on. You trail after it, the land changing again. The salt gives way to gravel, then to dust, then to dried, cracked mud with just enough give that each of your steps leaves a mark. And then over a low ridge, you see it. The sea. Not the ancient one, the modern one. The edge of what's left. Still blue. Still vast, but smaller, warmer. The dinosaur stands at the threshold between past and present, and doesn't blink. It stands motionless at the shoreline. The sea ahead is different from what it once knew, less brine, more blue. Waves roll in with gentle hiss and hiss, again licking at the creature's feet like a dog that doesn't quite trust its owner anymore. The dinosaur doesn't step back. It doesn't lean forward either. It just stands there, neck poised like a question mark, too polite to interrupt. You catch up, panting, the smell of ocean lifting off the water like steam off a skillet. You didn't expect to make it this far. Honestly, you weren't sure it was even going somewhere. But here it is, facing the modern ocean like a ghost, standing at its own memorial. You sit in the sand behind it. It doesn't acknowledge you, but that's just how it is. You've grown used to being background noise. The gulls begin to gather, a dozen of them at first, then more. They whirl overhead loud and entitled like they own the sky. One lands close and stares at you with sideways eyes. It blinks rapidly. You try not to take it personally. The dinosaur remains still. The gulls squawk louder. And then, like someone flipping a switch, the dinosaur moves. But not away. Toward. It steps into the surf slow and sure, as if testing a long-forgotten bath temperature. The water surges against its legs, eddies wrapping around its limbs like friendly snakes. It lowers its head and drinks. You cough involuntarily. Salt water. Again. Apparently yes. It slurps calmly, mouth submerged. When it lifts its head, a ribbon of seaweed hangs briefly from its snout before slipping free. The gulls circle again, louder now. A few swoop low, emboldened. One pecks at the dinosaur's back. A mistake. The dinosaur swings its neck with sudden grace, whip fast, and snaps its jaws in the gull's direction. Not to kill, just to warn. The gull freaks out, loses a feather midair. It hightails it up into the clouds, trailing indignation and a strong sense of having made poor life choices. The rest scatter. You can't help it. You laugh. The dinosaur lowers its head again. Not to drink this time, to watch. It stares at the waves with the same unblinking eyes that stared down deserts and basins and drying pools. And now you see it clearly. This is a creature that doesn't blink not because it won't, but because it can't afford to. Not in a world that changes this fast. Historians still debate whether this type of dinosaur truly adapted to marine conditions or if it simply tolerated them as a last resort. Some argue they were never fully aquatic, just marsh-edge specialists. Others point to wear patterns on the teeth and isotopic markers in the bones that suggest an almost exclusive saltwater diet. But you're watching one in it now. Alive. Unfazed. The tide begins to pull back. Tiny crabs emerge from the wet sand, skittering sideways like anxious punctuation. The dinosaur doesn't flinch, doesn't flick its tail, just watches. Then it wades deeper. Knee-deep becomes belly-deep. The sea wraps around its torso like it's reclaiming something. You rise slowly, drawn forward, shoes filling with wet sand as you follow. Waves crash softly around your ankles. The cold stings. But the dinosaur? It doesn't notice. And suddenly, there's another shape ahead. Same species, smaller frame, neck curled in a resting posture, mostly submerged. At first, you think it's a rock. Then it shifts. And your dinosaur, the one you followed through death valleys and salt deserts and ancient nesting grounds, lets out that same low sound again. Thunder distilled. The second creature responds not with a sound, but a slow rolling breath. A reunion. You stay very still. This feels like something old and sacred. The two creatures drift closer. No fanfare, no bellowing, no dominance. Just stillness. You step back, allowing space. And then from the shallows, a third head rises. Small, round. Hatchling. You gasp quietly, your throat tightens. It blinks. Of course it blinks. Its eyes are glossy and wide lashes wet with salt curiosity pulsing in every twitch. It wobbles forward on awkward limbs, struggling against the suck of the sea. The adult moves to block the worst of the tide with its body shielding it without touching. Odd fact to savor: many modern marine reptiles, sea turtles for instance, don't nurture their young. They lay and leave, but these they stay, at least a little while longer. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had post-hatching parental care. Nest site fossils suggest they did. Some bones were found grouped in family units with juveniles showing signs of staying with adults long after hatching. But behavior doesn't fossilize. Moments like this, they vanish unless someone watches. Lucky you. The hatchling moves toward the second adult. Probably the mother. Or maybe just the one who stayed. The larger dinosaur, the one you followed, watches but doesn't interfere. Its role feels different, protective but distant. A sentinel. And now you finally understand something that's been bothering you since this began. It's not that it never blinked. It's that it never stopped watching. Every nest, every path, every vanished pool, every salt-stained relic of the world it once knew. It watched because it had to remember. Because someone would come after. And now they have. The moon rises behind you, pale and enormous, casting a long sheen across the surf like a trail of spilled mercury. You stand ankle-deep in seawater salt, stiffening your clothes' breath, catching just a little as the waves roll over your boots. You'd move back, but you can't. Not now. The dinosaur. The one you followed, the one that drank brine and watched without blinking, has stopped in water deep enough to lift its body slightly. Its limbs shift from bearing weight to balancing with subtle ease, like it's done this all its life. You see now that this wasn't just a trek to the ocean. This was a return. And in the shallows, the hatchling splashes awkwardly toward the second adult, slipping and scrambling in that clumsy way all new life begins. You smile. The wind picks up. Not playful, not gentle, real wind. You smell the storm before you feel it. That electric salt tang that sticks to your teeth. The kind of scent that makes seabirds scream and fishermen pull their lines. Your dinosaur lifts its head. So does the other. You look to the horizon and you see it. a bruised wall of cloud heavy and low rolling towards shore like a slow, patient wave that forgot it was supposed to stop at the beach. Lightning pulses inside it, lighting the clouds from within like a lantern filled with bad ideas. You glance at the animals. No panic, no retreat. Instead, the larger one steps forward into the deepening water. It's not fleeing, it's testing. You watch slack-jawed as it lets the first high wave crash against its chest, salt spray, catching the moonlight like falling glass. It doesn't flinch. Of course not. It never blinked through desert storms. It won't blink through this. The smaller adult herds the hatchling to higher ground, guiding it with the side of its body steady as a windbreak. You stay low, crouching behind a dune now, squinting through sand-stung eyes. That storm isn't going to miss. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had the neural complexity to anticipate storms. Some argue behavior like this is instinct, pure and simple. Others believe that migratory species evolved weather-reading skills we still don't fully understand. Maybe they felt barometric pressure shifts. Maybe they read cloud patterns. Maybe they just knew. You're watching something older than explanation. A bolt of lightning splits the sky. The sea is lit like day for a heartbeat, and in that flicker you see the large dinosaur raise its neck high above the watermouth, open slightly, eyes wide, still not blinking. The wind screams across the beach, now flattening grasses, peeling sheets of foam off the sea. You press yourself to the dune teeth. Gritted one arm shielding your face. Sand grinds against your cheeks between your teeth and your ears. And still it stands. The dinosaur doesn't retreat. It braces itself against the storm body, half-submerged tail whipping in rhythm with the waves. Its posture is strong, not rigid but grounded. Balanced. A bridge between land and sea, between memory and instinct. And you shivering, blinking, thoroughly human can only watch. Odd fact to survive this moment. There's a frog in the Namib Desert that digs a trench, faces the incoming wind, and lets itself be buried to wait out storms. It's not bravery, it's strategy. Your dinosaur isn't fighting this weather, it's welcoming it. Maybe because the storm brings something the drylands never could: renewal. The lightning intensifies, the clouds push in harder. Rain begins, not the polite, misty kind. No. This is prehistoric rain. Fat drops that hit like thrown pebbles, warm and immediate. The beach turns to sludge in seconds. The hatchling chirps a high, warbling squeak barely audible through the chaos. The smaller adult nudges it further inland, away from the surf. You lose sight of them in the rain. But the large one's still there. You can't explain it, but you suddenly know this storm is part of the pattern. Part of why it returned. The nesting grounds, the migration, the brine pools, the basin, all connected to a cycle that's too vast for you to map but perfect in its own alien logic. And the storm, it's necessary. It brings silt. It flushes the salt flats. It reshapes the nesting dunes. It renews the evaporite patterns. It scares off the scavengers. It races old tracks so only the right ones remain. It's part of the story. And the dinosaur stands still because it knows that. Because it's always known. Historians still debate whether any dinosaurs lived long enough to remember events from season to season, let alone from decade to decade. Some paleontologists think most species barely made it to 30. Others believe that the long-necked giants, the coastal survivors, may have passed a century quietly, watching, waiting, guiding their kind through ancient seasons. Your dinosaur's skin glistens in the downpour. Salt streaks wash away. The sea crashes higher now, but it doesn't yield. It lifts one foot and plants it again, a statement in mud and tide. The storm breaks over you like a wall, and for the briefest, maddest moment you stand face to the wind, blinking furiously and laugh, because you understand now. It wasn't just built for survival, it chose it. It chased storms because storms remember. You huddle back into the dunes, soaking, shivering, still smiling. The storm howls on, and somewhere out in the surf, unblinking eyes stare into lightning without fear. When you wake, the world is soft again. The storm has passed, leaving behind a beach scraped clean by wind and water. No clouds, no thunder, just silence so complete you hear your own heart like a drum someone left playing too long. The sand beneath you is damp and cold. You sit up slowly, brushing off salt-caked sleeves, squinting toward the surf. It's still there. The dinosaur stands motionless in the shallows, coated in a thin film of drying brine. Salt crystals sparkle on its back and limbs like it's dressed for some ancient ceremony. You stare at the glinting scales and realize it's wearing the storm not as armor, as proof. Like the last time it made it through, it begins to walk. Not inland, not out to sea along the coast now, following the curl of the beach, where the dunes flatten into a long strip of hard-packed sand. You scramble up and follow legs, sore feet squishing in your boots. You keep your distance. You don't want to ruin this. Because now you realize something else. You're witnessing the end of a pilgrimage. But not toward water, not toward nesting, not even toward family, toward stillness. You glance down and notice the footprints again, fresh and deep, but different. Slower, less crisp, as if each step takes more effort now. Or maybe less need. The salt is beginning to mark it. Thin, crystalline sheets form along its flanks. Behind the eyes where its glands weep brine, the deposits are thicker now. Not pain, not decay, just accumulation. You walk alongside this quiet monument of a creature and it dawns on you. Salt, not sweat, marks the survivor. It has no cuts, no bruises, no blood, no breaks. But the salt tells its story. Every step leaves behind flecks of white. Every pause brings a faint crunch beneath its feet. The salt is becoming part of it. You reach a bend in the shoreline where the beach narrows and the rock formations press in from both sides. The waves here crash harder. The air grows sharper. Sea foam flies sideways on wind that forgot the storm ended hours ago. And then you see them. Bones. A lot of them. Piled not by accident, but by time. A sloped alcove just above the tide line filled with curved ribs, jaws, femurs, vertebrae, big bones, all the same kind. All the same species. Dozens. Upright. Leaning. Some even still connected by fossilized sinew. They're not scattered. They're placed. Arranged by nature or chance, but arranged nonetheless. Like a congregation caught in mid-motion. You stop walking. So does it. The dinosaur approaches slowly, stepping into the field of its own dead, like it's walking among statues of itself. Its gaze does not shift. It doesn't lower its head. It simply walks forward past fossilized brethren through memories carved in calcium. You step carefully into the grove, heart pounding in your ears. These bones are old, far older than any you've seen until now. They still hold the shape of the animal. Many are curled upright necks bent into question marks, tails arched like sleeping dogs. They didn't fall. They rested. This is a graveyard, but not of loss, of choice. Historians still debate whether non-avian dinosaurs had any awareness of death, whether they could sense when it was near or even choose where to go when their time came. Some researchers dismiss the idea outright. Others point to fossil beds where dozens of one species gathered at the end of their lives. Coincidence, catastrophe, or ritual. You watch your dinosaur walk among the salt-coated dead, and it doesn't blink, because this isn't horror. This is belonging. It stops at the center of the field, and for the first time its posture shifts completely. No longer forward, no longer tall. It lowers itself. Not abruptly, slowly, carefully, like someone kneeling into memory. Front limbs bend, back legs fold, tail curls to the side. It rests. You stand frozen. It doesn't move. Not for minutes. You walk closer, slowly. Sand muffles your steps. When you're close enough to see the rise and fall of its breathing slow, calm, you feel something in your throat catch. It knows you're here. It just doesn't need you to do anything. The salt has reached its face now. Crystals edge along the jawline. One eye glistens with a thin sheen of brine. It doesn't blink it away. It won't, because there's no need. You sit down in the sand, cold, damp, still. You both stay that way for what feels like hours. The waves come in, go out. The wind rises again, falls, and somewhere far off you hear gulls return. This time they don't scream. They just circle quietly like mourners, unsure of the schedule. You think about sweat, about how humans shed water when they panic, how we leak in fear, in heat, in stress, how our bodies scream for balance. And this creature, it doesn't sweat, it salts. It carries its survival not as moisture lost, but as mineral kept. And maybe that's the difference. You blink again slowly. You can't help it. Your eyes sting. The dinosaur doesn't. It rests now, eyes open, still watching. Because even now, even here, it remembers. And you remember too? The wind pulls harder now, ruffling your jacket and sending thin plumes of sand dancing across the fossilized field. You remain still. Not out of respect, though there's that too, but because anything more would feel wrong. This is no place for noise. Not today. The dinosaur doesn't stir. It remains folded into its resting pose just as the others once did, just as the bones around you still do. Its eye, the one you can see, is open, unclouded, reflecting the gray, bright sky. Not lifeless, not vacant, just still. It's the kind of stillness that's so absolute you stop questioning it. And then in the silence you notice something beneath your feet. Tracks. Faint, shallow, not recent, but different. Smaller. You crouch down and brush away the top layer of wind-blown grit, revealing a web of footprints. Hatchlings. Dozens. Maybe more. Fanning out from the very spot where the adults now lie entombed. The trails swirl and scatter, some looping back, some vanishing into dunes that no longer exist. They're not frantic, not rushed. They walked away. This was never a place of collapse. It was a place of parting. You run your hand across one of the prints, barely the size of your palm. Perfectly preserved. The toe groove still sharp. And suddenly, the weight of what you've seen hits you. They came here to vanish so their young could go. This was a farewell ground. A pilgrimage not for birth but for departure. And the salt didn't kill them. It preserved them. Your dinosaur shifts slightly, just a breath, a small sway. You can hear its exhale now, slow and deep. No distress, no weakness, just peace. You wonder if this is the end, or if it's just waiting for something. The sky darkens again, but not with storm. Clouds, real clouds. Heavy shadowy layers pulling in from the west like tired hands folding over the sun. A light drizzle begins, fat, lazy drops that patter across the bones and dissolve in seconds. You hold out your palm. Rain, cool and pure. And then you see it. On the far side of the graveyard, barely visible through the rising mist movement. A shape. Small, slender, tentative. Then another, and another. Hatchlings. They're here. You blink hard, squinting into the gloom. They're not walking in. They're not arriving. They're passing through. They're following the same trails. They aren't stopping. They're walking the same path out. You stay low. You don't move. You don't speak. The dinosaur doesn't react. But you know it sees them. Of course it does. It always did. Historians still debate whether dinosaur young stayed with parents beyond hatching, whether they were raised, guided, taught, or if their instincts alone carried them forward. Fossil nests tell one story. Bone beds tell another. But this tells all of them. The hatchlings don't look back. They move through the boneyard like whispers, like memories that refuse to fade. You count 7 before they vanish into the low fog. There could be more. You hope there are more. Because that's what this is, isn't it? A relay. One generation stepping out while the other fades. Odd fact, in parts of the Pacific Ocean, sea turtles return to lay eggs on the same beach where they were born. Even after decades. Even after continents shift, they return without ever blinking. You sit beside your dinosaur and realize you are not here to watch it die. You're here to witness it complete. It lifts its head once more, slowly, eyes scanning the mist. You follow its gaze, but there's nothing left to see. The young are gone. The sea is quiet, and it lowers its neck to the ground. One final breath moves through its ribs. Then stillness. True stillness. You wait a full minute before you move. 2. Maybe more. When you do rise, your knees ache, your body feels heavy, but your chest feels light. You reach out just once and place your hand gently on its side. The skin is rough, drying now. Salt crystals flake beneath your touch. It never blinked, because it was never looking away. The fog thickens behind you as you begin your slow descent down the far side of the ridge. Each step away from the graveyard feels quieter than the last, like the world is cushioning your movements now, letting you leave without echo. You don't look back. It's not that you're trying to be brave, it's that you don't need to. The memory of its still and salt-crusted eyes open, surrounded by those who watched before, is burned into your mind with clarity of moonlight on a black sea. Looking back would only blur it. The trail ahead curves gently, leading you down into a narrow channel carved long ago by water and wind. The stone here is soft-striped with color pink beige rust, bands of compressed time. Each layer a different age, a different silence. You run your hand along one wall as you pass. The salt clings to it. You wipe your fingers on your pants, but it doesn't come off. Good. Let it stay. Eventually, the path widens into a flat basin shielded from wind filled with low dunes and glimmering rocks. The ground here is strange firm, but hollow-sounding. You kneel and knock on it with your knuckles. The sound that returns is soft. You dig a little, just a finger's depth. Stone gives way to powder. Powder gives way to dampness. Then you find it. Bone. Not much. Just the curve of a scapula or hip. But enough. You brush it clean. Another one, then another. Dozens. Stacked. Aligned. Upright. And every one of them facing the same direction. You stand slowly. It's not just a graveyard here, it's a route. The pilgrimage was longer than you thought. They came from everywhere. Different bodies, different ages, all gathered, all pointed toward the same final passage. You're standing in the fossil of a migration. Historians still debate whether dinosaur herds moved with purpose or were simply drawn to water, to warmth, to instinct. Most migration theories are based on bone beds found far from food sources or trackways etched into stone, but none explain this. Not quite. You walk forward, stepping between the preserved outlines of ribs and spines and skulls, all half-buried, all frozen mid-journey. Some lie in pairs. Others collapsed mid-step. One, a small one, juvenile, may be curled into a tight spiral, like it lay down for just a second and never stood again. You exhale, and your breath fogs in the cooling air. Odd fact, some whales still beach themselves deliberately, especially the old ones. No illness, no wounds, just completion. They arrive at a place where they've heard something before or seen something familiar, and they stop. No one knows why. You sit on a stone shaped like a curled fin and close your eyes. Behind your lids, the image returns, a long neck arched against a storm, salt tears trailing from unblinking eyes. A body still and crusted, more monument than muscle. Hatchlings threading through bones with the innocence of those who haven't yet learned what not to touch. You think about memory, about how it's stored in places as much as in minds. These dinosaurs, they weren't just animals. They were archivists, salt archivists. You lie back and let your hand fall into the sand. It's warm here below the surface. You wiggle your fingers and they come up dusted with fine crystals. There's no smell of decay, no rot, just salt and stone and silence. And that's when it hits you. They didn't fear death. They expected it, planned for it, chose where it would happen, and trusted that someone would follow, not to mourn, but to know. You sit up again, heart beating with an odd calm. You're not here to grieve. You're here to remember, and maybe, just maybe, to carry it forward. Far above, something moves. You look up and catch a shape gliding in the distance, broad wing, slow rhythm. A bird, big, alone. It doesn't cry out. It just sails forward, shadow sliding across the earth. It doesn't blink either. You return to the edge of the sea as the sky begins to pale. The tide has crept back in quietly. No waves now, just gentle lapping against the shore like the earth is breathing through its lips. You can see your footprints from yesterday, already softened, half swallowed by wind and salt. You follow them, not because you're retracing steps, but because you want to see where they fade. And they do. Near the same place the dinosaur stood. There's nothing left of it here. No marks, no trail. The sea has erased it. But somehow that feels right. You sit in the sand and let the water touch your feet. It's cold again, but less hostile. You stare at the horizon until the sun finally peeks up weak and sleepy, painting the salt flats in lavender and gold. It feels unreal, like you're inside a fossil of light. You wonder how long it's been since this place felt warm. You close your eyes just for a minute, and it comes again, not as an image, but as a presence. The dinosaur. Not towering now, not distant, just there, still, watching, not to judge, not to warn, just to make sure you saw. That's what it was doing this whole time, wasn't it? Making sure someone saw. The salt, the nests, the hatchlings, the bones arranged like songs no one remembered how to sing. And now that someone has now that you have, maybe that's enough. Historians still debate whether memories can imprint in landscapes, whether geology holds echoes of moments if someone's there to listen. Most call that poetic nonsense. You don't. Not anymore. You lie back in the sand and let your hand fall into the brine-soaked grit. It sticks to your skin like it doesn't want to let go. Above you, gulls circle in silence. No more screaming. The air is still. And in the salt, it sparkles, like breath, like thought, like memory. You followed it from the dead heart of a salt basin to the shoreline of the present, through nesting grounds and fossil graveyards across forgotten rivers and into the hush of its final resting place. The dinosaur never blinked, not because it couldn't, but because it didn't have to. This was not just a creature built for survival. It was a creature built for memory, for pattern, for salt. Every place it paused, brine pools, evaporated lagoons, wind-sculpted dunes, was a page in its long, silent story. You walked behind it not to chase but to learn. You saw how it outlasted rivers that dried 5 times over, how it circled empty nests not in mourning but in remembrance, how it sought salt water not for punishment but for balance. And at the end of it all, where the sea met bone and thunder met stillness, it did not fall. It rested. You watched as others emerged, hatchlings weaving through mist, following ancient footprints without knowing why. The cycle continued. The watchers became the remembered. The salt held everything. Now you carry that stillness with you. The memory of a creature that drank poison and left clarity behind. That welcomed storms and left salt in its wake. That stood not because it was unafraid, but because it had already endured everything that fear could offer. It didn't blink, but you did. And now you will never forget.